Back when I was chasing bench PRs, I hit a big plateau. You see, I wanted to get the 60k GBR, but I failed like 5 times in a row, so over a course of 4 weeks, but I had no idea why. Until I just calculated my calories again and I ate another piece of bread. Literally, to break the plateau I was in, I got a piece of bread and I ate it. Problem solved. 3 months later, I was trying to get my 80k GPR and I stumbled across the same problem, the plateau. So I calculated my calories again and I was eating the amount of calories I needed. So I double checked everything, making sure that what I was eating had the calories I needed. Then I checked my training, if I was training too much, if I was training too little, if I needed to do anything else for my bench press. No technique, but I had everything on spot. My training was on spot, my nutrition was on spot. But I still couldn't get the PR. I thought I was approaching my natural limit 9 months into training. That does not make any sense. So why did I actually plateau? The thing is, it's not what you actually think. It's in progressive overload. Nutrition and training is not the most important things. Of course, they're basically 1/3. The training is 1/3 and the nutrition 1/3. But there are 3 aspects that go into progressive overload. The third aspect is your actual recovery. You see, training is the stimulus for muscle growth. Nutrition is the fuel for muscle growth. Recovery is you're giving your body time to recover and build the muscle. Just not giving it time is going to build the muscle, but there's 4 aspects, 4 reasons why that you're actually not growing. And make sure you stick to the end, because the last thing, the majority of gym goers skip. And that's the reason why most gym goers get injured over time. Now we're going to get into the first thing, which is probably the most important thing, which is simply just sleep. So by sleep, we're giving our muscles the time it needs to recover. In the gym we go and stimulate the muscles by, resistance training, and then we give our muscles the fuel it needs by the protein and the calories to actually grow, and then sleep is basically giving it the time to recover. So, but people think that you only need like 8 hours of sleep, okay? Yeah, that actually is true. You only need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. But the thing is, there's a lot of other things that go into actual sleep. Proper, good quality and quantity sleep. So the first thing that goes into sleep is actually having a sleep schedule. There's 2 things that go into the sleep schedule. You need to have a time to go to bed, and a time to wake up. So for me, that would be 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock. I just said you only need 8 hours of sleep, so why am I not going to bed at 10? Yes, you need 8 hours of sleep, but are you going to sleep as soon as you go to bed? Like, the minute you go to bed, are you asleep? No. It'll at least take you like 20-30 minutes to go to sleep, at least for me, Actually less, that I actually have a proper sleep schedule and I know how to actually go to sleep faster. You'll need at least 9 hours of bedtime, at least. 8 hours of bedtime if you only have room for 7 hours of sleep, but really try to get 9 hours at the best, okay? So you're gonna pick a time. So, if you need to get up, let's say you need to get up at 7, your bedtime, when you actually need to be in bed, you're not getting ready for bed, but you're actually in bed, that is 10, alright? So if you need to get up at 7, you need to be in bed by 10. And okay, you have a sleep schedule, but you actually need to stick to it. You see, your body's going to take a while to actually get used to the rhythm. You'll at least need to take 2 weeks to actually get used to the fact that you're going to bed at 10 and you're waking up at 7. For me, it took 2 weeks, and to be honest, the first 2 weeks were fucking miserable because my sleep schedule was so shit. Okay, I was going to bed at whenever I want, 10, waking up, and going to bed, I couldn't go to sleep right away. Depending on how you cooked your sleep schedule actually was, let's say you go to bed at fucking 12 o'clock every night and get up at 6. When you go to bed at 9, you're not going to go to sleep right away. It's at least going to take you 1 or 2 hours to actually get to sleep. And when you wake up, you're going to feel tired. Okay, you're going to feel tired. But you'll need to stick through this phase and you'll need to get through it. At least 1 or 2 weeks, depending on how cooked you actually are. So if you're going to bed at least 1 night every night and getting up at 6 or 7, then yeah, you're cooked, okay? But you'll need to stick through this phase at least 1 or 2 weeks. But okay, we basically have the 2 main principles. We have the schedule and the duration down. That is not, okay, we're getting the quantity. We're getting basically some of the quality, most of the quantity that we're getting. With the schedule and the duration of sleep, we're basically getting most of the quality and a lot, basically all the quantity of the sleep we need. But to improve the quality of our sleep even more, you want to incorporate a 1 hour wind down routine. So what does this mean? So the goal of this wind down routine is to get our heart rate low. So by doing this, we want to put the screens away, but I doubt you can do that. So what you can do is, on, let's say, your phone, and you doom scroll at night because you're a piece of shit, okay? You can basically get a filter, on the iPhone. You can look up a tutorial. I'm not going to show you, it's tedious. Look up a video on YouTube, search red color filter, Android, iPhone, Samsung, it doesn't matter, and then they'll show you a tutorial on how to get a color filter on your phone. For example, on the iPhone, once you set it up on the settings, if you triple tap the power button, your screen will become red. The red filter blocks out the blue lights. In LEDs, when you see blue lights, it basically decreases melatonin levels. Melatonin is basically the chemical in your body that is released when you get tired and when your body says, okay, it's time to go to sleep. But when you're like watching screens, doom scrolling on TikTok, with the blue lights, your body is basically thinking, it's daylight right now, your body thinks it's looking at the sun, or it's looking at daylight. So it's going to decrease these melatonin levels, and you're not going to feel as tired. You might say, okay, I'm going to doom scroll for a bit before I get tired. Fuck off. Right, just fuck off, right? If you're that cooked, okay, put the red light on, and especially in your room. In my room, I basically have this LED bulb, alright? You can basically get one on Amazon, probably costs like 10 euros, $10, whatever, £10. This bulb you can set up with your phone, and you can change the colors of the bulb. You can change it blue, purple, whatever the fuck you want. But you want to change it to red, okay? At least at night. Obviously in the morning, if depending if it's winter, you need an actual light to see, obviously. So you can just go on your phone and then go in the app and then change it to the white, or when you're going to bed, change it to red. That is also a really good tactic. Red filters on your phone, on your lights. Depending on how cooked you are, just cut out all screens, okay? Things like increase your heart rate, you want to cut out, emotional TV shows, because you're watching those romance animes, because, you get no bitches. They'll get you emotional and your heart rate will go up, So just cut out everything, literally. Go in your room, put the red light on. If you don't have red lights, just keep the lights off, and then just, doom scroll on your phone for an hour with the red lights. I mean, that's better than nothing. So if you have this wind down routine, you'll be great. If you're really locked in, you're in bed, you're gonna want to meditate before you actually go to sleep. So when you're in bed, go on YouTube, find like a meditation video. Just at first, you only do like 1 minute of meditation, and then slowly increase. Probably progressive over. First you want it 1 minute, then do 2, then do 5, then increase it to like 8 or 10, and then increase it to 15. So every night before I go to sleep, I'll do a 15-minute meditation where I'm just focusing on my breath, inhale, exhale, and I do that for 15 minutes, and I just, I listen to the video, it's telling me when to inhale and when to exhale. Do that for 15 minutes, and your heart rate will go really low. You'll become really relaxed. You might not feel anything at first, but trust me, your sleep will feel it. Alright, so I yapped enough about sleep. Let's get into the second thing. The second thing is actually taking rest days. Rest days, okay? You might think of rest days as just a day to just fuck off and then do fuck all, but rest days are actually important, especially for natural lifters and even for advanced lifters. But when you're starting out, you'll need rest days. Like if you're training every day, you're taking no rest days, you're gonna build up fatigue in your muscles, in your tendons, and eventually, if you're not taking rest days, it'll lead to an injury, because you're basically building a fatigue over time, over and over and over, until it's just too much. And that's probably the reason why you're actually plateauing, in your lifts. I get it, if you don't want to take rest days, the gym, we love the gym, we love the gym, we love getting the pumps, but you'll need to take at least one rest day in a week, okay? So every 3 days, take a rest day, or have 2 days in the week where you have a planned rest day. So for me, on Wednesday and on Sunday, it's just a planned rest day that I take off, and since I actually have a life, I do things on a rest day. I do things on rest days. You may not have a life, which I get it. But for maximal gains, think about this. If you're not taking rest days, you're minimizing gains. Take rest days and you maximize it. Now the third thing that I forgot to talk about in my training video, which I posted like 3 weeks ago, is warming up, which is basically just recovery, but active recovery, you could say. Warming up is the most important thing to do before you actually get into your full working sets. What goes into warming up? First of all, we're going to get our body temperature high by just doing a little bit of cardio. So we're going to go on a treadmill, we're going to get a little incline, and we're going to do like 3 kilometers to 5 kilometers an hour, okay? You know, if you're American, like just 3 miles an hour, put it in an incline of like 5%, you know, and we're going to walk on it for like 3 to 5 minutes. That's it. You know, the most important thing of warming up is we want to get our body temperature high. You know, think about a car, you know. If you're not warming up your car before you actually drive, you know, you're going to fuck up all the mechanisms. So the same thing is with your body. If you're not warming up and getting your body temperature high, you're going to fuck up all your tendons. And trust me, I know it. I skipped all my warm-ups. I skipped my warm-ups. I had to take 6 months off the gym. Half a year. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is dynamic stretching. So what goes into dynamic stretching, I recommend you look at this video by Jeff Nippard. He basically tells you everything about warming up. You know, he'll explain everything better with all his studies and statistics, but go into his video, you'll see all the dynamic stretches for your upper body and for your lower body. So the third thing you should do is actual warm-up sets, okay? So before you actually get into your full working set, and this goes for every exercise. This is a mistake I did when I was a beginner. When I was actually incorporating warming up, I only warmed up for one of my exercises. No one actually talked about you need to warm up for every exercise. Warm up for every exercise. You know, at least for, like, say, you're doing a push day, you train your chest first. You know, definitely warm up for the first exercise in your chest. And then once you're doing your shoulder exercise, you'll need to warm up for that. You know, you don't need to do as many warm-up sets for your other chest exercises, but make sure you're doing it for like your shoulder and then your tricep. So how many warm-up sets should you actually do per exercise? At best, 3. So the first warm-up set, we're going to do 50% of our working weight. Now make sure, I see way too many people who are warming up and then they're just like doing this with a fucking bar and then thinking like that's a warm-up. No, that's not a warm-up. Imagine, you know, with 50% of the weight that you're doing 100%, you know, imagine how fast the bar would go up. It's not going to go up as fast. Same bar speed you would do with your working set, you know. Do that, control it down, and do like 5 reps. 5 to 10 reps, I just do 5 reps. Okay, and then the second set, you're going to do 75% of your weight. And then same thing, making sure you're actually controlling the concentric, which is basically the positive side of the rep, and just doing 3 to 5. And then we're going to do one more warm-up set, basically the third warm-up set, where we're doing 90% of the weight. So of course this is a lot of the weight. We're just going to do 1 rep. This is going to like, okay, it's also going to warm us up, but it's also going to get our brain like locked in, you know, making sure that our brain is like prepared for the weight. So we're going to do 90% of the weight, just 1 rep. And this time we're going to do the rep as fast as possible because it's 90% of the weight. You have so much control over your muscles that you know what 90% of your muscle output is, okay? Do it. But most likely you can't. Just do 100% of your power. So the fourth thing is the thing that most gym goers skip. And this fourth thing is called deload weeks. So what is a deload week? So the function of a deload week is to flush out all the fatigue you are building up through your hard training, especially when you're bulking and you're putting your tendons under new stress every time you build muscle. So the function of it is just simply flushing out the fatigue. So how do you do that? So during this week, so this is the first type of deload week. There's 2 types of deload weeks. The first type is what most people should do. So what you're going to do is cut your volume and your intensity in half. So what I mean by that, let's say you're doing 3 sets per exercise. You're simply gonna do 1 or 2. So obviously you can't cut 3 sets in half, that's be 1.5 sets, it doesn't make sense. Just pick 1 or 2 sets per exercise. And then the intensity, what I mean by cutting the intensity in half is just simply cutting your weight in half. So let's say you did, I don't know, 60 kg on the bench, just simply do 30. And then make sure you're controlling concentric because obviously the weight is going to be lighter. And the function of this is to flush out fatigue, it's not to create fatigue. So we're just going to pretend it's a warm-up set, you know, we're just doing warm-up sets for the rest of your workout for a week. Just control the weight, up and down. So the second type is just taking the full week off. And this is for the people, let's say you're going on holiday, you know, access to the gym is going to be very little. You know, you're not going to be able to go to the gym as much. Your macros, you're not going to have control of that, much control of that. So simply just take the week off. You know, it's good for like if you want to spend time with your family, friends. But just take the full week off, not care about anything. You know, just take the full week off. As simple as that. First type of deload week what most people should do if you want to like keep your strength for the next week. If you're going to take the full week off, you might lose a little strength, a little. The worst is like the weight feels a little heavier. You're probably still going to get, if not more reps, you build muscles from the previous session, but you should be fine. So that's literally it. Recovery, those 4 things, that's it. That's all you need to know. Simple as that. I hope you learned something.